Alright, hi everyone. So unfortunately the bad weather continues here in Cyprus. It continues to be wet, cold and windy, so there's not been a lot of opportunities for imaging. So today we're going to take a look at the Lunt LS80MT. So this is the solar scope that I recently purchased, and I did an unboxing video for it a couple of weeks ago. I'll put the link up in the corner. And today we're going to convert the scope into a night scope, as this is the MT model. It's modular and it allows you to convert it into an all-purpose night scope as well. So to do that, we're going to be attaching the optional Crayford focuser to turn it into the night scope. We're also going to be then attaching an ZWO EAF electronic focuser to the focus unit, and for imaging I'm going to be using an ASI 533 one-shot colour camera. I've already got two 2600 colour cameras and I didn't want to go and get another one, so I thought, well, I'll give the 533 a try. It seems to be a pretty good scope, pretty good camera as well. So we'll give that a try, and it'll also give me some variation where I can move around the cameras depending on what I'm doing with the different scopes. And also the scope is 560mm in its native focal length, and it's very close obviously to the 11-inch RASA I've got, which is 620mm. So I decided to also get a 0.8 focal reducer, which will take it down to 446mm. Sorry, 448mm. For guiding, so I've got currently a off-axis guider on the Edge 11. So obviously I don't have a guide scope with that camera, with that telescope. And on the RASA I'm currently using a ZWO 260 focal length 60mm guide scope. So I thought, I've got this small ZWO 30mm guide scope with 120mm focal length. I thought we'll give that a try, and we're going to mount that onto the scope as well. Alright, so let's get into it. Here is the optional Crayford focuser module for converting the scope into night use. And today we're going to attach the EAF focus motor onto this. Now this focuser does have on this side of the cover both a coarse and a fine filter focus adjustment. So we're going to leave that covered. We're not going to be touching that side, but we're going to be modifying this side, removing this focus knob and attaching the focus motor onto here. So let's get going. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is at the bottom of the focuser, you can see we've got a small grub screw here next to the coarse adjustment wheel. So we need to remove that grub screw to get into the grub screws that lock the adjustment knob onto the focuser shaft. So just a small Allen key, we can remove that grub screw and put that to the side for later. And then inside, you won't probably be able to see, but inside the hole you need to turn the focuser until you can see the grub screw that latches onto the shaft. Now there is actually two in there, 90 degrees apart, so we need to find them just by rotating the focuser, and I think that's one of them there. There's one of them. So we can loosen that off. Don't want to remove it fully, but just loosen it enough. And then find the second one by rotating the focuser. And there it is there. So we can loosen that one as well. And there we go, the focus adjustment wheel comes off. So that exposes the shaft which we're going to attach the focus motor onto. So the next thing we also have to do is, this is the locking screw for locking the focuser in position. We can remove that. Put it to the side. Now in the box with the ZWO EAF, there's the usual instruction manual, a couple of Allen keys, the cables, a set of screws, the motor itself, the mounting bracket, and a selection of couplers to go onto the shaft. So we need to find the coupler that fits onto this focuser shaft. Now that one fits, but it's quite loose. Now let's just undo these grub screws a little bit so we can get it on. I just need to make sure that I'm putting it the right way around and I don't put the side that's meant to go. Okay, so that goes on there, and that's a good fit onto there. So again, similar to the focus adjustment knob, there is 2 grub screws at each end offset at 90 degrees. So we need to position the focuser so that the shaft with the flat face, the keyway, is in a position where we can line up the grub screws. And I'm just going to lock that collar down into place. Let me just make sure I've got it the right way around. Yeah. And through the hole we can lock down the first grub screw. And we'll probably have to make some adjustments once we get the focus motor into position, but in the meantime that's the first grub screw locked, and I'll turn it 90 degrees and lock the second one, if I can find it. And that's it locked down. So now as I turn the focuser, the coupling is turning. So next up, we're going to have to position the bracket. So we open the box of screws. Let's move these other 3 couplers out of the way. Okay. So selection of washers and screws. So the focus motor, I think, uses these large ones. No, it doesn't. It uses the small ones. Okay, so they screw into there. So we need 2 of them for that. And then onto the focuser body. These screws also fit. The small ones, the same small ones, also fit into there, which is great. Alright, so on the focus motor bracket, you can see we've got a sliding keyway there, so we can adjust the height of the focus motor. So this is going to sit in that orientation, and then once we get the right height, I can find the keyway, it'll all sit in that position. Alright, so first thing we'll do is we'll put the 2 screws onto the focuser body, focus motor, sorry, and we'll just make them loose. I should really be putting a couple of washers in here. Alright, so that's the focuser onto the body. Now we can slide the shaft into the focus motor. Now again, you just need to look, there is a keyway on here, so we need to adjust the focuser so I know where the key is. There's one in there, so there's the key, and there is the flat. So I'm just going to nip that down to hold it in place. Okay. Now by rotating the focuser, we can get onto the screws. Alright, so now we can attach the top screws. I don't know if there's enough thread there for a washer, but we'll just soon see. Yeah, there should be enough there. I'll try it. If not, can always remove it again. Okay, we've got 2 or 3 turns on there, and then the top one. Alright, so there we've got the focus motor onto the EAF, onto the focuser. So we just need to now nip up all the grub screws and make sure everything is sitting nice and square. I'm actually going to remove that top one and move it back up. There is another hole further up the focuser that will reach. And if I unscrew that grub screw that I nipped up, I should be able to get another turn, another slight adjustment. Moving it up the shaft slightly, but not too much. Okay. And then lock that down into position. So here I've still got access to the grub screw hole, which is great, which means I can adjust that once I've got everything in its final position and lock down the collar. I can find the right Allen key. Okay, and I'll lock the top body. There we go. And then the hole for the focus lock, not that it's required, that can go back in there just so I don't lose it. And there we have the focus motor onto the motor mount. So these EAF kit I got also came with the hand control, not that it'll ever be used because it will be used by the controlled by the computer. But let's plug it in and I can use this to turn the focuser to get access to the remaining grub screws. So the cable came with that. I can plug that into here and plug this into a USB power port. Alright, and now if I plug this into here and into the handset, it's come alive and I should have control, which I do. There we go. So now I can just nip up the grub screws, locking everything down. And I just need to find the other grub screw, which is there. And that should be them all locked down. And now with everything in alignment, I can now do the final tighten on the EAF bracket. Alright, so that is the EAF mounted onto the focuser. And I have got control and everything's running smoothly. Alright, so that is the focuser done. So I can remove this and remove the USB power. The next thing we're going to do is add on the focus reducer. So this focuser comes with a standard 2" and a 2" to 1 1/4 adapter. So we're not going to be using either of these. The camera itself, move this out of the way. The camera itself does come with a nose piece adapter, so should you desire, you could set up your necessary back focus. And here's the camera. So yeah, we could use the necessary adapters to get the right back focus spacing. And then using the adapter ring, which is also in the box, screw that to the eyepiece, nose piece, sorry, screw that into the adapter. And then we could, should we desire, mount the camera directly into the eyepiece holder and do it like that. However, as it's a nose piece, we could get a little bit of tilt there, although I don't know how much it would be noticeable at this focal length, but nevertheless, that's what you can do. But what we're going to do, as I say, is we're going to introduce the focal reducer, so I can take that camera back out again. And I'm actually going to remove the 2" eyepiece adapter, which I don't need. And then I'm also going to unscrew the top of the focuser. And if I remember right, these threads are M63. And what we're going to do is we're going to directly attach the focus reducer into the focuser. So that is in another box. Remove this. So this focuser that I've got, this focus reducer I've got is Starfield 0.8. And this one is adjustable. So I can use the adjustments to get the correct back focus based on the specs, and this can screw directly into the telescope. So it's a simple case of screwing this in here. And there we have it. So that's now the focus, the Starfield 0.8 attached onto the focuser. And now this has got an M48 thread that comes off of here, so this can go directly onto the camera. So on the camera I've already got the 21 M42 male to female extension, and the M42 to M48 16.5 extension, and the camera depth, the sensor depth is 17.5 with the fitted black extension piece. So I can remove the nose piece and the reducer and screw this directly onto the focus reducer. And here we have this full optical train for the focuser set up. So of course, being adjustable, I can unlock this and adjust the back focal distance depending on the various specs. I do remember reading somewhere about that it's set for 14 point something millimeters, but we'll get more into that once I get my first imaging session done up. Alright, so that is a full setup done for the focuser. We've got the focuser, the optional focuser that comes to convert the scope into a night scope. We've got the ZWO EAF mounted onto the focuser. We've got the 0.8 focal reducer, and we've got the ZWO ASI533 one-shot colour camera, and the extension pieces that came supplied with the camera to take it to the 55mm back focus distance. So that's that bit done. So let's put this to side for a minute. And let's move some of these caps and covers and screws so I don't lose them. And move the Allen keys out of the way. Alright, so now let's look at the scope. So here's the scope itself. This is configured for the solar use. So here we've got the red area is the single stack etalons and the pressure tuner. Then we've got the focuser, and we've got the B1800 blocking filter, and I've got my ASI174mm planetary camera, the mono camera in there, which I do the solar imaging with. So effectively everything from the red bit down we can remove from the scope, because that's for daytime use and solar. And to remove that, we simply undo these thumb screws and we can lift off the solar module, as you can see here. So there you can see the etalon chamber reflecting the red, and the focuser, the blocking filter, and the camera. So we can put that to the side. Now we can take the the nighttime focuser that we have just assembled, and we can stick that in the place of the solar unit, locking down the thumb screws, making sure everything is square and there's no gaps, etc. And just nip up these thumb screws. There we have it. So now that is the scope configured for night use at 448mm. So the next thing we need to think about is guiding. So on this telescope itself there is no place for a guide scope. We do have the handle, which also acts as a red dot solar finder during the day. So I don't want to mess around with removing that or adjusting the rings or anything like that in case I get this out of alignment, although I don't think it's possible given that it's all machined to fit and be parallel to the scope. But what I've come up with, because I've got no other option, is I'm going to mount this miniscope onto the handle of the telescope. And to do that, I have 3D printed this bracket. So I'll drop a link to this in the description, but effectively it's a mini shoe and a clamp assembly, and with some 3.5mm thumb screws that I purchased some time ago off of eBay for doing other bits and bobs. And I'm going to attach this to the handle, and inside all I've done is put some of the sticky backed foam, insulating foam for around doors and things, just to add a little bit of protection to the handle so I don't scrape it, and also just to give it a little bit of a grip. So we'll mount that onto the handle. Let's move the miniscope out of the way. So this was the first print that I had done of this model, albeit functional. There's a couple of minor things. I used these pressed brass inserts for the screws, and I didn't put enough support material inside the model to take them, and this one drifted off slightly, so I've had to open up the holes just with a drill bit, but nevertheless it's still functional. So let's just clamp this onto here. So with the way that I've done the clamp, the thumb screws obviously sit at the bottom, which makes it quite awkward to tighten them up properly. You don't get a lot of leverage on it. So what I'm going to do is, maybe in a future revision of this clamp, is I'm going to try and make the assembly so that I can adjust the thumb screws, the locking screws, from the side. But at the moment it's working, and that is, once I tighten it up, relatively secure. Just need to compress the foam and things just to get it to take a good hold. Alright, so there is a nice secure clamp. So now we can insert the mini guide scope onto there and clamp that down. And there we have, that ain't going anywhere, guide scope. So for guiding, again with the cameras, so the planetary camera that I'm using on the solar scope, I can use that as a guide scope. So I'll remove that from the solar scope focus unit, and I can attach this into here. And there we have it. One fully completed night scope, ready to go once the weather gets its act together. Alright, so there we have it. It's converting a Lunt LS80MT into its night scope using the optional Crayford focuser, 0.8 focus reducer, ASI 533 one-shot colour camera, a ZWO mini guide scope, and an ASI 174mm mono planetary camera for guiding, and a custom printed 3D clamp, or a custom 3D printed clamp. And there we have it. So can't wait till the weather sorts itself out and I can get out and actually give this a try. So in the meantime, thanks for watching, and hopefully get some updates soon, and see how this scope performs. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. It certainly helps the channel to grow, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll obviously get any notifications of any new content. So one other thing that I'm currently working on is a piece of software to act as a server for the Unihedron SQM USB unit. So that's coming along nicely. I've been making use of the cloudy and rainy days to work on that over the last few days, and it's almost finished and appears to be working fine. So that'll be coming in a future update as well. So in the meantime, thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.